It's Friday, the 7th of February 2025. Let's look at the headlines making waves in the Nigerian dailies of today. We begin with the Guardian newspaper. Lawmakers push for 31 new states amid 11.47 trillion naira debt by existing ones. You can turn to page 6 of the Guardian newspaper to get the complete story. Above that, FG swaps 6334 education system with 12-4 model, scraps JSS SS. You can turn to page 7 of the Guardian newspaper to get the complete story. Beside that, hours after matriculation, Abuja Varsity VC Governing Council sacked. You can turn to page 30 of the Guardian newspaper to get the complete story. Adesina at 65. Tinubu, Sanwo-Olu, Abiodun, Otedola, brand AFDP president, Nigeria's best exploit. You can turn to page 3 of the Guardian newspaper to get the complete story. And beside the picture, fresh inflation concern as NPA raises port charges by 15%. You can turn to page 18 of the Guardian newspaper to get the complete story. And underneath the picture, grim realities in Southeast as gunmen dictate funeral terms. You can turn to page 4 and 5 of the Guardian newspaper to get the complete story. Underneath the picture, Tinubu, Gowon, Mohammed chart path to Africa's growth, prosperity. You can turn to page 3 as well of the Guardian newspaper to get the complete story. Beside that, manufacturers warn FG against new electricity tariff hike. You can turn to page 3 of the Guardian newspaper to get the complete story. PDP crisis. Disciplinary committee invites Anyanwu Otom as BOT directs NWC to swear in Ude Okoye. You can turn to page 6 of the Guardian newspaper to get the complete story. Halt IOC's divestment till environmental remediation is done, reps tell FG. You can turn to page 29 of the Guardian newspaper to get the complete story. Nigerian records world's highest road accident, says Red Cross. You can turn to page 7 of the Guardian newspaper to get the complete story. Now to the Punch newspaper. The bolder headlines: ex-National Assembly members groups fought reps 31 new states proposal. You can turn to page 2 of the Punch newspaper to get the complete story. Beside the nameplates, fresh price hike looms as NPA plans 15% tariff increase. You can turn to page 23 of the Punch newspaper to get the complete story. Underneath that, Obeigbena GHL file appeal against favorable High Court ruling. You can turn to page 26 of the Punch newspaper to get the complete story. Underneath the picture, Tinubu, Mbeki, Gowon advocate homegrown solutions to Africa's challenges. You can turn to page 19 of the Punch newspaper to get the complete story. Underneath that, PDP crisis. Ikimi's panel receives 30 petitions summons Anyanwu Otom. You can turn to page 2 of the Punch newspaper to get the complete story. Beside that, Lagos installs speed limit monitors, imposes 50,000 naira fine. You can turn to page 6 of the Punch newspaper to get the complete story. Beside that, opposition plans unveiling of mega coalition June. You can turn to page 12 of the Punch newspaper to get the complete story. Now to the Nigerian Tribune. The bolder headlines: Man talk one over proposed hike in electricity tariff. You can turn to pages 2 and 6 to get the complete story. Man says planned increase may lead to closure of more businesses. Ill-timed deliberate act of economic oppression against Nigeria, says TUC. You can turn to page 2 and 6 to get the complete story. And above the nameplates, Tinubu sacks Uni Abuja VC barely 5 weeks into office. Acting UNN VC also removed in varsity's leadership overhaul. You can turn to page 5 of the Nigerian Tribune to get the complete story. Beside that, 13 patients from US came to Nigeria for kidney transplant, Shetiba. You can turn to page 12 of the Nigerian Tribune to get the complete story. And beside the picture, NPA reviews pot tariff by 15%. You can turn to page 7 of the Nigerian Tribune to get the complete story. Underneath that, Oshun, Adeleke engages 10,000 youths for Imole youth cause. You can turn to page 3 of the Nigerian Tribune to get the complete story. And underneath that, Kogi Assembly bans foreigners direct access to cashew nut farmers. You can turn to page 4 of the Nigerian Tribune to get the complete story. Underneath that, as African leaders, we must abandon foreign dependency, says Tinubu. Poor leadership ban of African development in Mbeki. You can turn to page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune to get the complete story. Beside that, Constitution review. Reps receive request for creation of 31 states to hold 12 regional national public hearings. You can turn to page 3 of the Nigerian Tribune to get the complete story. Now to the Vanguard newspaper. Uproar as IGP PSC clash over retirement of police officers. IGP has no power to stop PSC, retired DIG. It's about self-preservation, retired AIG. I don't see this as IGP rejecting our decision. PSC PRO. Affected 7 officers sue PSC. You can turn to page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper to get the complete story. Above the name place, port charges to go up 15% as NPA pushes for efficiency. You can turn to page 19 of the Vanguard newspaper to get the complete story. Underneath that, Minister pushes for transition from 934 to 12-4 system of education. You can turn to page 7 of the Vanguard newspaper to get the complete story. Reps Constitution Review Panel proposes creation of 31 more states. You can turn to page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper to get the complete story. Beside the picture, UK citizenship. Badnoch didn't single out Nigeria, Foreign Ministry. You can turn to page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper to get the complete story. Underneath that, decomposing body of kidnapped Anambra lawmaker found on 2nd Niger Bridge. You can turn to page 7 of the Vanguard newspaper to get the complete story. Underneath the picture, fallout of Trump's executive order in Nigeria. Program stoppage, job losses trail US aid funds freeze. You can turn to page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper to get the complete story. Underneath that, Kanu's release will bring peace, Reps panel. You can turn to page 11 of the Vanguard newspaper to get the complete story. Beside that, Sharia will ignite war in Southeast, Chief Imam of Yoruba land. You can turn to page 10 of the Vanguard newspaper to get the complete story. And beside that, man cautions against further hike in electricity tariff. You can turn to page 20 of the Vanguard newspaper to get the complete story. Beside that, 2025 U17 AFCON, Nigerians World Cup hopes dashed as CAF rules out Golden Eagles. You can turn to page 29 of the Vanguard newspaper to get the complete story. Finally, Business Day newspaper. The bolder headlines: 1-year T-bills attract 3 trillion naira on high yields. You can turn to page 22 of the Business Day newspaper to get the complete story. Beside the picture, how secret music codes boost album sales. You can turn to page 31 of the Business Day newspaper to get the complete story. Underneath that, Dangote refinery ramps up PMS production to 33 million liters per day. You can turn to page 33 of the Business Day newspaper to get the complete story. And that's it for today. If any of these papers caught your attention, do well to get a copy of the paper for yourself to get the complete story.
Visit Housing TV Africa on YouTube and click on the subscribe button. Subscribe to Housing TV Africa to stay updated on latest happenings in Nigeria's housing sector. Follow our social media pages, like and share our posts on Facebook, Housing TV Africa, on Twitter, Housing TV Africa, Instagram, Housing TV Africa. Join the conversation and keep up with latest housing updates.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing development broadcasting.